Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Wednesday Night Live from Courtroom Confidential, the fastest growing true crime news channel on YouTube. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. I see a lot of our familiar names, JC Broadway and Subi Sue and Susan D. Thank you guys so much for always being so kind about setting aside some time on your Wednesday evening to join us, and we really, really appreciate it. And I see a lot of new faces. I say faces, but I mean names. For the first time. So thank you so much for joining us. If you are new, let me introduce myself. My name is Joshua Ritter. I am a former prosecutor with the LA District Attorney's Office. I was there for just over 10 years. I left and went into private practice as a criminal defense attorney. And this is Courtroom Confidential, where we try our best to present to you both sides of the courtroom. And we hope that we do that. And this is our Wednesday night live show. It's our midweek check-in with everything that's happening in true crime. And we usually try to have a guest. And tonight we are very blessed to have a fantastic guest who is Gavin Fish, who has his own channel. He's a reporter. He's actually got an announcement. I won't steal his thunder. He's got a little announcement about his juggling the worlds between YouTube and reporting. He's going to be joining us tonight, and I'm very excited about that because he has become kind of my go-to expert on a couple of cases. One of those is the case of Sean Mickey Steins. This is the sheriff who murdered a judge in the judge's chambers, allegedly, though I've seen it on camera, and you've all seen it on camera. We're going to be talking about that case, some recent developments in that, and along with a case that Gavin has been in the trenches with for a long period of time, and that is the Ellen Greenberg case out of Pennsylvania and the latest developments in that case. So stay to the end for announcements as always. By the way, I don't want to keep everybody in anticipation, and I'm very happy about this. So I do have one announcement to begin the show with, and that is I did find my passport. I found my jacket and my passport. When I say I found, I mean the hotel found, and they're returning it to me. So I'm very happy. I cannot tell you the stress that was giving to me. Not so much that I lost it, but the idea that I would have to go back and get a replacement one. And they basically want you to provide like proof of life, your firstborn child, and you know, your family history going back to the Mayflower in order to get a new passport. And I was just dying with the idea of having to go through that experience. So they found it. They're sending it back to me. Life is good. Josh is able to travel the world again. So before we get started, please make sure to hit that like button. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and share this with anyone that you think might enjoy it. But I'm going to stop talking and get our guests on here. Hello, my friend. How are you?
Hello, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. You're just kind of catching up as to the announcement about my passport, but you were asking me before we started about CrimeCon.
I've got mine. Don't worry. Mine is
you
just
safe. Keep yours with you at all times.
Always on my desk.
We went to CrimeCon. CrimeCon was fantastic. I don't have one of those real IDs just yet because I don't want to deal with the DMV. I hate going and doing paperwork. So I don't have a real ID. I have my passport that I bring with me when I travel, and I lost it. Something happened while we were there. I had to sweet talk my way back onto the plane to get back home.
But you successfully did it.
Which I successfully did. Nice. And there was no exchange of money, in case anybody was wondering. It was just me batting my eyes and pleading. And then we got back to LA and thought, God, I got to go get a new passport. But then my wife called them again, and they miraculously somehow within the days since we left found it, and they're sending it back to me. I'm very happy.
From experience, I can tell you the woes of dealing with a lost passport. It's no fun. So I'm glad you found it.
I can't imagine it is. So I'm very happy. But that is not what we're here to talk about tonight. We have some cases that you've been following very closely. Mary Jubinville says the dynamic duo of Josh and Gavin, perfect duo. Thanks you so much, Marie. Thank you so much, Laura Waldy, for the gift of a membership. I appreciate that. I appreciate you getting us started this evening. We're going to talk about Mickey Stein's case you've been following closely. We're going to be talking about Ellen Greenberg. Well, first of all, you have an announcement. I don't want to make too much of this, but it's a little bit of a life shift that I'm very proud of you for. So tell us what that
Yeah,
is.
I've been sharing it on my channel. There's no secret that I've been wanting to be a full-time YouTuber since I started. I've been at this for 4 years, doing pretty darn well thanks to incredible viewers. But on Monday is the day that I switch from part-time YouTube and full-time reporting to full-time YouTube, part-time reporting. So I'm
I
really
love
looking
it.
forward to that.
I love it. Good for
Gonna try
you.
to
Congratulations.
keep the changes kind of slow, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna ease into it, but
Yeah.
that's what we're gonna be doing.
Pardon me. I am very
Bless you.
glad to hear that. I applaud you, and I know how difficult that is. There's something too about kind of the pull of the old world holding on to you. Like, I feel like even if I could do YouTube full time and keep the lights on and the kids fed and everything else, I would still keep my toes dipped into the legal world and take clients here and there, because it's like I don't know if I can just jump all in. So I get it.
Yeah. Well, I love my job and I love
Yeah.
the company that I work for. It's awesome. It's just there's a moment where that switch has to happen. Hopefully there's that moment that comes, right? I'm blessed that it has come. But I still really love my job. I love the people that I work with, and I love the company. So yeah, we're gonna cruise along like this for I don't know how long, but it'll
Wow.
be a good long time.
God bless. And plus what you're doing is just kind of reporting in a different forum anyways. I mean, it's still kind of covering stories and talking about them. You're just doing it in front of your computer rather than typing it into your computer.
Yeah.
At least that is the overly simplified way that I see it. So,
Well, and when I started YouTube, one of the things that I really enjoyed about it, when I started YouTube, it was COVID. There
yeah,
was no full-time job. There wasn't really anything to do. But one of the things that I really enjoyed doing is getting out. I would dig through like actual piles of old paperwork in courthouse basements and stuff like that.
right.
I loved it. I thought it was the best part of what it was that I was doing, and I haven't been able to do that for a couple of years now. So I'm looking forward to being able to continue my live streaming, but also get some really good deep dives, maybe some historical stuff. And I am working on a case where we're still trying to identify a Jane Doe here in Western Pennsylvania that we're making real strides on, but those strides take years in between each step. So yeah, we'll just keep doing that.
Cool. Very cool. We talked about this before. In case you guys are new to Gavin or you just want to learn more about him, we actually did an interview. We sat down a few months ago, you and I, and you talked to us about that whole kind of career path of yours. And I remember you saying how much you do love just kind of digging through paperwork in the bowels of some old government building and finding those hidden little gems that can lead an investigation or change the course of an investigation. So I there's a part of me that does appreciate that. I feel like that would kind of be almost like a archaeologist kind of feeling to find something like that. So I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, again, congratulations. One thing I wanted to bring up before we get into these cases, though, on this channel, I really make a concerted effort to stay in our lane, and we don't get into politics at all. But there was something that took place earlier today that is an incredible tragedy, and I know it's all over the internet, and seems to be the only thing that anyone is talking about on the news. And I felt like we couldn't at least we could not proceed without at least addressing it. And that is Charlie Kirk, who is a conservative activist. He ran a movement called Turning Point USA. It aimed towards kind of just growing or promoting a conservative interest in college-aged folks. He was speaking on the Utah College campus earlier today. That's actually a picture from that event, and around 12:20 local time. There's no other way to describe it, but he was assassinated. He was shot. Yeah. There's footage on Twitter. You can find it if you want. We're not going to show it to you here. I've seen a lot of really horrible things in my career. This is something that is even disturbing to me. He was rushed to the hospital, but it is not surprising that he did not survive those injuries. He was shot. It looks to be right in the neck. Like I said, I'm not going to touch on the politics of it. I just think it's a complete tragedy that we talk about these types of things. It's a complete tragedy that someone can't show up to a college campus and just kind of encourage debate amongst people. Utah Governor Spencer Cox came out and said that they do have a person of interest in custody. He referred to it as a political assassination. And just before we hopped on here, Kash Patel, the FBI director, in a tweet said that the subject for this horrific shooting today that took the life of Charlie Kirk is now in custody. So it does sound like they have someone in custody. And Gavin, I'm not even going to like pose you a question. If you have thoughts, or I know you talked about it earlier today that you'd like to share, I will just end it before I turn it over to you by saying that this is a man he's 31 years old, married, and he's got 2 kids aged 3 and 1, a 3-year-old daughter and a 1-year-old son. And him and his wife made a concerted effort. You'll never find pictures of these kids' faces. They made a concerted effort to never share their faces or names. And I have trouble holding back tears to think about those young kids and his wife now going on and living without him. It's just a really, really sad situation.
It is. I try to stay away from politics. I'm pretty successful at it too. I call it the Dolly Parton principle. I follow Dolly Parton's advice: just keep politics out of entertainment, right?
Yeah.
But this is my home state. That's where I was born. That's where I spent part of my childhood, where my grandparents lived. They lived in Orem, right next to UVU there. Yeah, so it is a tragedy. We do seem to have a cultural problem right now here in America where we just can't seem to use our words to I guess to resolve conflicts. And I guess the irony there is, I think that Mr. Kirk was doing just that. He was trying really hard to engage with people, and of course he was trying to convert them, so to speak, right? Come over to his side. But yeah, it's just a tragedy. My father, who is now 77 years old, grew up without a dad. His dad died in an accident when he was 7 years old. I have witnessed my entire life just how hard that is for a person to be parent or fatherless. And I really, my prayers really go up for those 2 kiddos and now his widow, who in her 30s probably never thought that she would be a widow. Very sorry for that.
Yeah. It just, the idea of having to, oh my God, have a conversation with those little ones and explain to them, they can't even say goodbye, and they're not going to get it, and they're not going to understand it, and they're just going to be upset about it. It just tears my heart apart. Yeah. So thank you for allowing me to kind of just at least share that with everyone. I know everybody in the chat is aware of it, and if you're not aware of it, this is something horrible that happened today. But again, I really want to make a concerted effort to stay in my lane. I'm sure there's going to be a criminal investigation. I'm sure there'll be a trial. If there is, we'll cover it. But in the meantime, I'll just leave it at that. So let's switch gears, if we can, to the Sean Mickey Steins case. So
Mickey Stein.
The briefest, the cliffiest of cliff notes, as I say, kind of to catch people up. This is for a shooting that took place in Letcher County, Kentucky, back in September 19th of 2024. Sean Stines was the sheriff in that small community. He entered the chambers of Judge Kevin Mullins, actually has a conversation with the man. This is all captured on video, incredibly clear video. And he stands up at one point, and there's a freeze frame of it, just guns this man down. Yeah. Since that time, it seems like everyone is just trying to figure out why, because it does seem to have come out of nowhere. And at first there was a lot of conspiracy about whether or not the judge had some sort of relationship with his daughter. And we've actually received some new information on that. whether or not the judge was involved in some sort of sex ring in that community. And I know there's been some recent reporting on that. But there was some new information, and these are not, I don't want to call this leaked documents, but it was documents that were released to the media and then later on sealed. So there are currently sealed documents, but one of those was a jail intake form. And that's kind of my setup to you. What is it that we're learning from this form? And it was part of a motion by the defense, if you want to fill us in on that as well.
Yeah, the defense is trying to have the indictment dismissed. Mickey Steins was indicted for Kevin Mullen's murder about 2 months after the murder took place. And again, like you said, it was done on video. This is not a whodunit. This is a why'd you do it, man. That's kind of how I describe it anyway. What the devil? Why did this happen? Right. So a couple of months after he was jailed, he's confined for this. He was indicted, and in that indictment, in that grand jury, what do you call it? In the grand jury, they requested medical records.
Yeah.
And one of those medical records is his intake form, where a licensed clinical social worker actually said, that he is, well, I don't want to put words in it, but it basically says that he's still in an active state of psychosis. I'm reading here. That's why I'm looking off it. Right. He appears disoriented. He's only aware of things that he's told. He has no recollection of the recent past. It says that he's responding to internal stimuli. He's hearing things. Right. So yeah, that was one of the major things. And it became an issue of contention for the defense, because the defense is saying, hey, that indictment never should have taken place, because the testimony that was given, that was sworn in that grand jury hearing, was that he was in his sane mind.
Yeah.
But the jail, the social worker here in the jail says, no, he wasn't. And so do so many other pieces of his medical record. And so many other people, his wife and daughter, his aunt, so many people, a couple of women that worked for him in the sheriff's office had actually taken him the previous day to see his doctor because they were concerned about his mental health.
Yeah. So this is just so people kind of understand where we're at here. So in many jurisdictions, they will have an indictment through a grand jury. They may even have a subsequent preliminary hearing after that. I think in Kentucky, they are even planning on having a preliminary hearing after this grand jury indictment. Is that right?
They did the preliminary hearing before the indictment.
Oh, interesting.
So I don't understand. I don't know how that works.
I wish I could tell you I understood it. But these hearings, I do know this. They are probable cause determinations. So we're not dealing with the same standard burden of proof at trial. It's not beyond a reasonable doubt. It's a lesser standard, and it's asking whether or not there's enough information to hold this person to answer for trial. So does the government have enough evidence to even keep this person in custody while they're pending trial? So they will have evidence presented to them in the instance of a grand jury, but it's not everything. And in a grand jury specifically, the defense is not present and does not have the ability to cross-examine witnesses or present their own evidence. So a complaint that you oftentimes get from the defense when the transcripts of the grand jury are released is, hey, you guys didn't present anything to this jury to as a defense, because the prosecutor is supposed to wear kind of two hats. They are supposed to present some exculpatory evidence if they feel that it's very germane to the question being presented to the grand jury. But speaking both as a prosecutor and criminal defense attorney, I will tell you, it happens all the time that the defense goes, you didn't give them enough, and a judge goes, that's not really the point of this. So I've never, in fact, seen a situation where the defense has been able to successfully argue that the grand jury indictment should be thrown out because the prosecution did not present enough evidence, to fairly assess the case. Where this is different, though, is what you just pointed out, because it's one thing to say we didn't give exculpatory evidence, and it's another thing to to mislead the jurors. Okay.
Yeah.
So the grand jury, another thing people might not understand is they're allowed to ask questions, and they do. They'll submit questions to the prosecutor. And in this case, they actually requested medical documents, were not provided with those, were told by the investigator. And I'm not trying to throw this investigator under the bus. I'm not trying to say he was intentionally deceptive, but the state police detective Clayton Stamper testified, and you pointed it out earlier. He said, I have his quote here, that he was in his sane mind, which is interesting because you're not a doctor. Okay. So how you make
Right.
that evaluation, I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's what he testifies to. When we know that there is this evaluation from a jail intake form performed by a nurse who says all the things that you said, that he was still in an active state of psychosis, those two things don't square. So we're a little bit far afield from not enough from the defense, and we're kind of into that gray area of, wait a minute, did they actually deceive the grand jury, right?
Yeah, and one of the things that the Bartleys argued, I thought very well, it coming from a layperson, watching this like I'm at a tennis match or something. But one of the things that I think the Bartleys argued very well is that there were a couple things. First, going to what you just said, they do point out that the prosecution is under no obligation to share exculpatory evidence. However, they are supposed to be seeking justice.
Right.
Right. And so, and I talk about this on my channel quite a bit. I'm really, ever since I read Freakonomics, whatever, 2.5 decades ago, I really am kind of bought into this idea of what is the incentive structure around us and how does it impact us, right? And I honestly think that for the most part, prosecutors have a high incentive to win, and it's a greater incentive. That incentive to win is greater than the incentive to seek justice. And it really takes a person of a strong constitution to say, no, I got to seek justice, right? And so what the Bartleys are saying here is like, you are not seeking justice here, because not only did this LCSW say that he was in an active state of psychosis, but he also went and was examined by the Appalachian regional whatever it was, and they gave him a diagnosis. And the previous day he had gone to his doctor. His doctor had expressed concern, and the grand jury requested all of it, and they apparently didn't get it. And then the third part was that there was a question from a juror that was like, is there anything about Mickey's state of mind? But it was one of those questions. And the prosecutor hops in and goes, detective, to your personal knowledge, do you know of, it was one of those, like, I'm going to filter this down so that the jury doesn't hear the full answer. And the Bartleys are saying that's not seeking justice, that's seeking the win.
Well, I think that's a very good argument. And I love the way that you put it too, and I agree with you that it's hard for prosecutors because it's an adversarial structure, right? You're got attorneys on one side and attorneys on the other side. And it's hard to say that you shouldn't try to win. I mean, you get embroiled in these things. You get entrenched. As a prosecutor, I felt the same way. You want to win. It's just kind of these natural competitive juices start to flow inside of you. And it's hard as a prosecutor to sometimes go, wait a minute, am I trying to win here or am I trying to do the right thing? Because that's what you, as a defense attorney, no holds barred. You're just trying to win. That's what, in fact, constitutionally, that's what you're required to do.
That's your purpose.
Win. Aside from breaking the law, it's zealously advocate on behalf of your client. But as a prosecutor, you have to pump the brakes if you feel like you're not doing the right thing. And that, I think, is an excellent argument to be making here when like I said, there's a difference in my view between not presenting evidence and purposefully either hiding or confusing evidence being presented to the grand jury. Yeah.
My other thoughts on that is, like, when we talk about the incentives, most prosecutors are not the elected official, right? They are the prosecutors working underneath the elected official. but they still have tremendous pressure from the district attorney or state's attorney, whatever it is in that particular area, because that person gets elected based on whether they win or not.
Yep.
That's all people seem to care about, right? The other thing that I was, what was the second thing? Give me a second. Now I can't remember it, but I do remember a conversation with with an attorney friend of mine, where once he was like, "Hey, Gavin, do you play basketball?" Like, I mean, do I look like it? I did at one point. Yes.
Yeah.
Did you like to win? Yes. Yeah. So do I. You know, he had one of those things, but yeah, well, this was the second thing I wanted to tell you, Josh. The Bartleys are saying because of this, the indictment should be thrown out because they argue the jurors wouldn't have indicted had they known all about all this other stuff. And my thought on that is like, would they though? I mean, there was a video of him shooting 9 times. That's what came out in the testimony. There were 9 shots fired. I had heard 8 before, but okay, so 9 shots lobbied at the judge. I think they probably would have indicted. If I were on that jury, I think I would have indicted.
Well, you make an excellent point, and this is probably why, as good as their arguments might be, it's probably not going to change anything, is that there's a difference too in they're trying to bring a affirmative defense here. They're not trying to say that, hey, you don't have evidence that my client committed this crime, or I have an alibi that you didn't present, or something like that. You make an excellent point. This isn't a who done it. It's a what is it and a why did it happen kind of a thing. So it's kind of like the similar situation when the defense is going to lodge a self-defense argument, and they were to say, well, you didn't present enough evidence of self-defense during the grand jury. Well, listen, now we're getting down to questions of, am I advocating your affirmative defense enough? And that's very different than saying, here's the evidence. I have to prove a person on a certain date committed a certain crime. And I've done all that. Now, whether or not you want to argue he wasn't in the right state of mind, or in different situations it was a self-defense type of thing, that's a different question. And I think that's probably why the judge will go, yeah, maybe they didn't get all this evidence, but they'll get it at trial. And if they want to make that decision at trial, then the defense is can present that. But for my question right here, as far as allowing this to proceed to trial, the prosecution has answered that question with the grand jury. I think you're right. I think it'll come down to a judge saying, there's enough for an indictment here as far as a crime being committed, but you can go ahead and present your defenses at a later time.
Yeah.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was just thinking, one of the things that I really enjoy is really good lawyering. I just love, it's like appreciating, getting back to the basketball or the tennis metaphor, right? Like, one can be sucky at tennis and still really appreciate the game. And I'm that way with lawyering. I love reading these kinds of motions. I love going through. In fact, I got a new document that dropped from the court about 2 or 3 hours ago. I haven't read it yet, and I'm just like chomping at the bit. I can't wait to read it. I love this stuff. But I'm curious from your point of view, like when I read motions like this, I go, wow, well, that is a compelling argument. I really love that argument. And then the opposition will come in and they're like, whoa, man, that is a really good argument. Like, did you see the backswing on her? That's the way it kind of feels. So I'm wondering what it feels like as a lawyer when you see an argument like what the Bartleys have made here. Do you say to yourself, that wasn't as good as everybody thinks it is?
No, I do think I think a lot of the times you can appreciate the skill and the cleverness and the thinking outside of the box. And I think they made excellent arguments. It's not so much that their arguments are not convincing. It's just that the standards that the judge is dealing with is not in their favor. I mean, this is tipped heavily against their favor here. They're basically going to have to prove that this was intentional deception before they're going to get any traction with the judge. And I think a judge, to our points, is going to go, listen, I got a guy who shot another guy and it was caught on videotape. If you're asking me to say, should he go to trial on murder? Yeah. Now, are you saying that you've got some arguments and maybe those arguments weren't fully fleshed out or presented well enough at grand jury? Fine. But that's that doesn't mean that this guy isn't going to go to trial on murder. I think that's how it's going to play out, even though their arguments, I think, are very persuasive. It's just the standard and the burden that the judge has to consider is not in their favor. I did have, there was something else that I wanted to get into because this came out in the grand jury, and that was, there was a lot of talk from very early on too, which was bizarre to me about, I remember hearing stories. I can't remember if they were like an actual reports or if I'm just getting it from the internet and it's all become confused in my head. But there was talk early on that that Stines asked to use the judge's phone. Yeah. And that he called his daughter, and that he, I remember people saying, well, that his daughter's number was already in his phone, and that's what caused him to do this. And there was then people ran wild with the idea of, is the judge, did he have some sort of, relationship with his daughter? And did that cause the shooting? Some stuff came out in the grand jury about all of this. In fact, specific stuff about all of this. Could you walk us through that?
Sure. Yeah. The prosecutor asked Detective Stamper about that specifically, asked about it by name. The jury even followed up with questions about that. It kind of felt like the jury had been in the community before they got called into service, right? And they had heard these kinds of things. But Detective Stamper said in no uncertain terms, there was no relationship between Judge Mullins and Mickey Stein's daughter, or Judge Mullins and Mickey Stein's wife. And one of the things that came out earlier, I mean, that wasn't shocking to me. I mean, it was kind of cool that it was in black and white, and we can kind of put that one to bed. But videos came out, I don't know, a couple months ago that were extended video of that day in the judge's chambers. It was like 14 minutes of it. And in that, it shows Mickey Stines trying to call his daughter on his phone, and then getting the phone from the judge. And it was like a tense moment. Like the judge threw his phone toward Mickey Stein. Nobody throws their own phone, right? It was weird. But he picked up, he had both phones out, and he was looking at his contact list, and he was dialing in a number. And he did that twice in the video. So when Detective Stamper testified to this, that there were only 2 times that anything related to Judge Mullins is connected to Mickey Stein's daughter, were the 2 calls that happened in the minutes leading up to Judge Mullins' murder.
Right.
And it was Mickey Steins that did it. Yeah.
Right. They had gone back, and they had, in fact, the grand jurors even asked, well, did you look anywhere else? Did you look in like kind of social media, Snapchat, anywhere else? And he said, yes, they had. And there was 0 connection that they could find, 0 evidence. In fact, I thought I had a quote from him there. Oh, here we go. There's no calls. There's no evidence to support that there was any kind of relationship between the judge and his daughter, and that the only call, yes, it's true, a call was made to the daughter on the judge's phone, but that was dialed by Stines while he's sitting there on video. So do we know? I mean, was he having trouble with his phone or something like that? Is that what we're kind of coming to the conclusion of?
I think we have to guess. To me, it's interesting that when he called her on his phone, he apparently didn't speak to her, but when he called her on the judge's phone, she picked up. To me, like in the beginning, many of us were like, oh, there's a relationship there. Like a lot of people were saying that. But honestly, if calls are coming in one after the other, a person is going to go, okay, something important is happening, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to pick up this call. So
yeah,
I don't think that there was anything between Judge Mullins and Mickey's wife or daughter. And like, that's one of those things. I try to stay skeptical. You got to put your reporter's hat on. What's that old saying? If your mom tells you it's Tuesday, check into it. Right. That's so you got to keep that skeptical hat on. And it is not impossible for people to lie on the stand, but it all seems to fit together that there was no relationship there.
Yeah. And again, this is one of those cases that does seem to have this weird kind of people are just, I think, so shocked by it that they
Well,
want
it's
a
shocking.
reason for it. Yeah, well, it is
Yeah,
shocking. And so I think it's understandable that we kind of run wild with skepticism or speculation as to why this happened. Let me thank some folks. Jude Evans, thank you so much for gifting the membership. Really appreciate that. That's a scary picture of a
that
tiger
is a
there.
great picture.
Alicia K. Mayo, good to hear from you. Hugs to everyone tonight. 9/11 tomorrow. Congratulations to Gavin. Congratulations to Joshua for the CrimeCon TCN win. Thank you so much, Alicia K. Mayo. Pentufel says this is so much bigger than Stines. How do they even begin to weed out the deep corruption in Letcher County, which is kind of to our point that there, as much as there's controversy surrounding this, it's kind of warranted now that we're finding out about some of the ongoings in that county. So thank you for that super chat, Pantufel. Fala, thank you so much for gifting the memberships. Appreciate that. The Quiet Fringe, appreciate you as well for the gift of a membership. Best Nancy, good to see you again. Gifting membership, appreciate that. All right.
They're taking care of your crew, man.
They
awesome.
are. They are. I love it. All this evidence though about his mental state, while it may not have the biggest role here at the grand jury, I do believe there is a very compelling argument starting to form as far as maybe some sort of insanity plea when they do go to trial, because you mentioned it earlier, but there are many people who have now come forward and said that he was in some sort of crisis leading up to this.
Yeah.
Even the idea that he may have stopped taking medication. There were people concerned about him leading up to this. And then afterwards, and that's always important to me as a lawyer, because there's a big difference between being in a mental psychotic state. I think the nurse says that he was still in an active state of psychosis. There's a difference between that and insanity for the purposes of a criminal case. Insanity for the purposes of a criminal case is I was so in an active mental state of psychosis that I didn't understand what I was doing or appreciate the ramifications of what I did. So many times you'll still see people do wildly crazy things, but then their behavior is of a person who knows what they did is wrong. In other words, somebody commits some sort of horrible murder out in the open, and then they run from the police, and they ditch the knife, and they take off their clothes, and they try to hide it. That's the actions of a person with consciousness of guilt, right?
Yes.
But to that point, we're now learning that after this shooting, Stines casually walks out of the courthouse, is kind of walking down the street as everybody's looking for this active shooter. And at one point, and this is the one that got me, officers are developing a plan to go find the shooter, and he turns to them and says, "There's nobody else, it's me." Wild.
Puts his pistol down on a table just like that. Yeah.
That is wild.
And I had watching the videos before, it's actually, I think it's the point of view of Detective Stamper. I had wondered, like, okay, is Mickey just a really good actor about, like, he plays psychosis professionally on TV or something? Is he just really good at that? Or was there something going on? And, when I watched that video in the beginning where they're trying to talk to him, it does kind of look like an act. Like, no, he's just trying to control this. He understands that he can't really say anything. He's a member of law enforcement. But then it gets to the point where they're taking him down into the jail, and he freaks out, and he thinks that there's somebody around the corner. He thinks that they're going to take him somewhere and do him harm. And then with Detective Stamper's testimony at the grand jury, where he described Mickey walked right past one of his deputies who asked him what's going on, and he got no response.
Right.
So the deputy just continued on to the courthouse. Right. Yeah. I think I'm convinced that Mickey was in a state of psychosis.
And a state of psychosis, to my point, that he may not have even appreciated what he was doing and the wrongness of what he was doing. They may have an argument here for insanity, like true actual insanity.
There's there's a local attorney named Ned Pillersdorf. Ned is he's actually running for political office right now in the state of Kentucky, and his wife is a former Kentucky State Supreme Court justice. I mean, they're a very impressive family. He is the one that was representing the two women who filed the lawsuit against Ben Fields that eventually led to the deposition, which eventually led to the shooting, right? And Ned, when I talked to him about it on my channel, he goes, maybe the defense is coming up with what I like to call a time to kill defense. And he was talking about the book, A Time to Kill, right? Where he's like, maybe he was just there was nothing else he could do in his mind. He thought that his wife and daughter were in deep danger. He believed that there was something going on, and the only reasonable thing to do in his sick mind at the moment was to kill the judge. Yeah. So I'm kind of looking forward to see how that plays out. Will they be arguing, it had to be done? You would have done it too if you were in his position.
I think it's going to be that and a combination of other things, a combination of he was sick, he was unbalanced, he was in a state of psychosis, he thought what he was doing was the right thing. Because like you said, they've got nothing else. He's caught on videotape. I mean, this is going to definitely come down to trying to get people with their head wrapped around why did this happen? And is there any kind of mitigation for that? Let's take some questions, and then I want to get us to our next case. But first of all, Ann Porter says she subscribed to Gavin, so good for that. Thank you, Ann. Okay, Zarkasm says, so the prosecution isn't required to disclose everything they have to the grand jury. I'm confused. You are absolutely correct. They are not required to, and they're not required to at a prelim either. Again, these are probable cause hearings that they only have to give them enough to answer the question of, is there a preponderance of the evidence, essentially? Is there a probable cause to believe this person committed this crime, but it's not proof beyond a reasonable doubt? So they don't have to give them everything, and they don't have to give them everything on the defense either. And there's a kind of a long history of case law saying that in many, many cases, that means even kind of the smallest bit of what the defense would like to argue does not have to be presented. Psychosaurus Rex, love that name, says, does a defendant's mental state even matter for a grand jury? Isn't that only relevant when going to an actual trial when the defense asserts insanity?
In this case, the grand jury asked specifically about the mental state.
Right. But this was kind of what we were talking about earlier, that the mental state's kind of a defense, but it becomes a different question when they're saying, is there evidence? And you're telling them either no, there isn't, or you're just not providing it to them, or you're only giving them your version of it. Like, to me, the part that is most bothering is not that they didn't present the evaluation from the nurse, but that he's asking the detective what was his mental state, and he's saying he was in his sane mind. That is just a little too much subterfuge for my taste. Here's one. Court Lurker says, didn't they just get back from lunch? If so, do we know what happened at that lunch? Is that true?
Sort of. Yeah. Several of them were at a lunch. In fact, the grand jury asked about the lunch as if, again, it was an indication to me that they had been living in the community. They had heard all these kind of rumors, right? They asked about the lunch. I think Mickey was there for part of it, but he and a guy named Michael Clark went out on a delivery of food, like a Meals on Wheels kind of thing. And according to Stamper, he said something strange happened there, and Mickey was behaving oddly even there. So it was one of those things where it's like kind of weird to, oh no, I don't think this Stamper said that. And come to think of it, that was in the motion that the Bartleys wrote. Sorry about that. The Bartleys were arguing that he went off to this Meals on Wheels thing. He wasn't at the full luncheon, but something happened where Mickey felt like they were trying to get him out into a place where he was vulnerable, like they were going to off him or something like that. So there was just A lot of weirdness going on.
Yeah, he I mean, the more and more we hear about this, it's obvious there was some deep paranoia existing in this man, and it's just whether or not that will rise to the level of insanity for the purposes of trial, we will
Well, and
see.
my question is, like, it is completely cool to be paranoid about a real threat. So
Yeah,
I'm wondering if the defense will bring up, like, yes, he was in psychosis, but and they've mentioned it at a couple hearings and in the media, but there was a real perceived threat to his family,
yeah,
right? So they've brought that up. I'm wondering if that'll come out in the trial.
interesting. Do we know a next court date or what's gonna happen next in that case?
Let's see. I don't remember it off the top of my head. I want to say October 14th.
Oh, I
I,
think you're right. I think I
I
did write that down
I
somewhere.
think the next thing is the judge is going to, they're either going to have a hearing on this motion, or there will be some resolution to the motion.
Okay. Well, we will keep our eyes on it. We'll follow it for everybody. If it comes back, I might bug you again because I love talking to you about this case. The other case I love talking to you about, however, though, is the Ellen Greenberg case. So again, the briefest of kind of catching people up. We're talking about the death of Ellen Greenberg. This was a woman in Manayunk. Did I say
Manayunk.
that right?
Yeah,
Manayunk,
it's just a
Pennsylvania.
neighborhood of Philadelphia. It's a suburb of Philadelphia.
Gotcha. Back in January 26th of 2011, she is found inside of her apartment with 20 stab wounds, including a knife lodged in her chest. It is initially declared a homicide by the medical examiner, then inexplicably changed to a suicide by the medical examiner. The evidence in support of suicide that has been pointed to was that the apartment door was allegedly locked from the inside at the time. There was
Right.
no signs of an intruder. This is according to police, so don't come at me in the comments. I'm just saying this is according to police. No evidence, no signs of an intruder, and no defensive wounds. But the evidence of homicide is that she's got 10 wounds to the back of her neck, including something I learned from Joseph Scott Morgan over the weekend, which I'm curious to hear your thoughts on. I'll get to that in a moment. Anyhow, this leads us to, how many years later, now here we are. There's 14 years later, there's a settlement in February because her family sues. Joshua and Sandra Greenberg sue. And part of that settlement is that there will be a expedited inquiry into the case because the medical examiner, Dr. Marlon Osborne, actually came back all those years later and said that according to an affidavit, Ellen's manner of death should be designated as something other than suicide, which was a really carefully chosen way of putting it, but basically saying this should not be classified as somebody taking their own life. It should be something else. Well, you got 20 stab wounds. That doesn't happen by accident or old age. So what else?
It's not natural. It's definitely not natural.
Right. Okay. So now that's where we're at. They were just back in court on September 4th, and Judge Linda Carpenter had some strong words. Tell us what went on here.
It was the most beautiful hearing I've ever been to in my life. Okay, so Josh and Sandy, their agreement was that the city would expeditiously review all the evidence and come to a new conclusion. Well, perhaps come to a new conclusion. They would have a new medical examiner take a look at it. Expeditiously is the thing that they're arguing here. Josh and Sandy's lawyer, Joe Pedraza, is saying, when they said expeditiously, we thought a few days, a week.
Right.
And here we are 7 months later. I think he was generous and said 5 months later because they didn't sign the agreement until a little bit later. But expeditious this is not, is what Joe says. And Judge Carpenter, I just wish that in the state of Pennsylvania they could allow us to record these kinds of things, because it was a thing of beauty. She lit into the city's attorney saying, this is definitely not expeditious. And every time she would lean into him, she would yell at him for a second and say, and then tell me, counsel, why you think, whatever she'd pose the question, the counsel would get enough time to go, oh, and then she would just lay in again. And it went on and on and on like that, to the point where she said, you know what? I think maybe I have the power to just change this to homicide.
Yeah.
I think I have the power to do that. Counsel, tell me why I don't have the power to do that. And it was another one of those, because I think that I can just go ahead and maybe I should just do that right now. She just really, really, really leaned into the guy. Ultimately, though, and disappointingly, they went into an in-camera room. We couldn't see what they were doing. We got the catharsis of seeing Judge Carpenter just lay into the city. But then when they came back, Judge Carpenter said, we've talked. I understand what's going on at the city a little bit better now. Decided to roll this to next month. So she continued it to October. Which bummed me out, man.
I've seen the quotes, and I wish I could have been there too, because it does sound like this was a judge in rare form. And I'm gonna just read some of the quotes that I have here. This is Judge Linda Carpenter. It's ridiculous, and you obviously just don't care, and that's probably why the Greenbergs are so frustrated, because if the city cared, expedited means a week or 10 days. I just love that.
Yes.
And then here, to your point, I thought this was great, and I actually kind of think she has a point. Sometimes these judges kind of shoot from the hip, and you're like, Your Honor, we can't really do that. But she makes a point. She goes, from the beginning, I never really understood why this just couldn't be changed to undetermined because of the circumstances. I don't understand what needs to be relooked at. I kind of agree. We're talking about a designation on an autopsy. We're not talking about moving mountains here. It's like there's obviously some circumstances where just calling it undetermined doesn't seem like we need to rewrite the Constitution to get that done.
Yeah. And I ask myself this question a lot, Josh. Now, a lawyer should actively, represent the interest of their client. In this case, the client is members or employees, former employees of the city of Philadelphia. But I don't understand why they haven't just said, well, from the beginning, one of the very first things that Joe Pedraza said in an opening letter to Dr. Osborne back in, 2019 or 2017, something like that. He goes, hey, I've got good news for you. You said that you changed it to suicide because Phil Hanton witnessed Sam Goldberg break down the door. But here's a letter, a declaration from Phil Hanton saying that is not true. So here's the good news, Dr. Osborne. You have the power to just change it. Why don't you just go ahead and change it?
Yeah.
And why he had to be sued twice and brought to the threshold of trial where he was going to be raked over the coals in order to finally say, this isn't a suicide is beyond me. I don't know why they fight it. I don't get it.
I don't get it either because, I get it when I start to put on my very suspicious foil hat and start to really think that there's a lot of corruption and handshaking and money being exchanged behind the scenes. But putting that all aside, because I don't know if we actually have proof of all of that, it doesn't make sense to me because it doesn't. I think what people don't understand is if they change it to undetermined, that really doesn't have that much of an effect on, the police can still investigate it or not. They can still, it doesn't, all of it, they still need us to bring charges against someone if that's what they want to do. It's not like this is some sort of magic moment, but it would just bring, do something for the Greenbergs for sure. But it's not like the police need this to open up an investigation, close an investigation, do whatever they want to do. It's just helpful in the furtherance of the Greenbergs' overall cause. The judge said something else too, which I really think probably got a fire under everybody's ass more than anything else. She goes, why don't I just put this back on the trial list? Say the settlement hasn't happened. There's been a breach of the settlement, correct? Like it was like, okay, this is not what is it? Expeditiously. Not in my view. Breach of the settlement, back on trial. That was probably the one that made everybody's, pucker more than anything else.
Yeah, and I think that's the one that's going to make the city move between the 4th and the 14th, right? It's like I'm ready to do this, council. I'm ready to put this all the way back to trial, and let's do this. And you brought up something that is a very important point in this case. Josh and Sandy Greenberg, their desire in all of this is not to have charges against who everybody believes killed Ellen. They've never accused Sam Goldberg of doing anything, and they've never said they want anything to happen to Sam Goldberg. All they've ever said is, our daughter did not do this to herself, and we want the world to know our daughter did not do this to herself. And that's all they want.
Yeah. It's a point that people, I think, fail to understand too, because even if, by the way, if the medical examiner goes back and says murder, homicide, still doesn't mean that all of a sudden we're looking at a trial. Like, even with that evaluation, the police still have to determine a suspect, build up a case. The prosecutors still have to decide whether or not they have enough to bring charges. I mean, it doesn't really change anything. This has just been a battle for the Greenbergs of, like you said, they don't want her going to rest with this is the determination that follows her name.
Yeah,
it's pretty incredible.
One of the things that Judge Carpenter said, she pointed out that the city is delaying, and as we all know, justice delayed is justice denied, right? The Greenbergs are not spring chickens. And I'm saying this, I love them. I consider, like, my mom, when I talk to my mother on the phone, which is, once a week or so, she always asks, how is your other mom? And when I talk with Sandy, she's doing the same thing. How are your parents? How are your kids? We hardly ever talk about the case anymore. It's become a very just familiar relationship with Josh and Sandy over this time, but I know them well. They're not spring chickens. And I've kind of felt like from the beginning, the city has just thought, if we drag this out 50 years, then it's
that's
done.
a sad thought. That's a sad thought, but you might be absolutely right. Wow. Well, one other thing I did want to, I can't let you go without asking, is I ran into Joseph Scott Morgan over the weekend out in Denver at CrimeCon, and he spoke on this case. Nancy Grace has got a book out about the case. A lot of people are very interested in this case because it's just one of those things where it's so, if we could put up that graphic again, Kaylin, it's just so immediately disturbing to you to see this. You're not a medical examiner. I'm not a medical examiner, but I have common sense. And to see something like this, and you're going to tell me that suicide, it very well may be, but you're going to have to do a heck of a lot more than what you've already done to convince me of that. And Joseph Scott Morgan, in speaking to him, I don't want to put him on the spot. I'm sure he'll talk to us about this, but he did say to me, he said, and I want to know if you've heard about this, that there are injuries that they believe on the back of her neck, at least one of them, that there's forensic evidence that it could be post-mortem.
Yeah.
Have you heard about this? Could you tell us about that?
Yeah. Joseph Scott Morgan and I actually presented this case at CrimeCon UK together. And
very cool.
He did it with Nancy in Denver. Yeah. So in the course of the lawsuit, the Greenbergs became aware of another medical examiner that worked in Philadelphia for a while. She was a board-certified neuropathologist, and she was asked by Dr. Gulino, the chief medical examiner at the time, to take a look at a sample of Ellen's spinal column. It's the only piece of, I guess, tissue left. And she took a look at it, and one of her observations was there's no vital response here. So what does that mean? Well, what she testified in her deposition was no vital response means no heartbeat. So, and then Joe pressed her on, does this mean that you think it happened post-mortem? And her answer was, that's the possibility. That's what it indicates to me. So there's that. And then, there are a couple of other things that I showed Joseph Scott Morgan when we were together, because Josh and Sandy have given me the whole case. That includes all the autopsy photos of their daughter. That includes the crime scene photos. That includes everything that they have never seen. They entrusted to my care, and they've allowed me to share them with a few people, including Joseph. There is a what is the medical term? There is a bruise under her skin as they deflect out. As they open her up and they deflect all of the neck muscles, she has a hemorrhage and a constellation of bruising on her neck. Like there's evidence that she was throttled, not to death, I don't think, but there was a struggle where she got a hemorrhage in her neck and bruising that was visible on the outside of it. Beyond that, the police say no defensive wounds. But when Tom Brennan and Tom is a retired Pennsylvania State homicide investigator who has worked pro bono for the Greenbergs for years on this. When we look at them both, I say, Tom, that to me looks like a defensive wound. And he goes, well, that's really interesting that you say that, Gavin. That looks like a defensive wound to me too. I don't know why these police are saying there's no defensive wounds, because there are like 4 on her on the tops of her fingers. Bruising all over. Dr. Osborne in his autopsy says there are 11 bruises. To my eye, there are more than 50 that I can count. It's like 50. I have to look at my notes. I kept notes, but it's like 55 bruises all over her body, including the bruises on her neck. So Dr. Osborne did such a terrible job on this. I'm hoping that when the medical examiner's office in Philadelphia reads his autopsy, then looks at the autopsy photos, they have the sense enough to go, hey, there's that hemorrhage that obviously Dr. Osborne saw, because he deflected up and said, hey, picture guy, take a picture of this, right? But he didn't put it in his autopsy. And there are 11 bruises in his autopsy, but I am seeing 4 dozen, right? I'm hoping, maybe beyond hope, because the city of Philadelphia just continues to disappoint, but I'm hoping that examiner will say, yeah, there is something there. And I hope they change it to homicide, not just undetermined.
As you're talking, I'm getting more and more kind of.
Oh, it'll work you up. It'll work you up.
But here's my question. Again, I keep coming back to this. It's one thing for the medical examiner to come out and say homicide, and I hope that they do. And it sounds like everything that you've described indicates that. But then you've got to get the police to take up that cause and do an investigation and put together a case, because cases cannot hinge on the medical examiner. A medical examiner can't identify who killed the person, just that the person was killed. So now the police got to go identify who is that person. Well, we all know there's a pretty clear prime suspect here, but they've got to build up a case against that person. And then they got to present that to the DA's office, and you've got to get a DA to file the thing.
Yeah.
Is there a chance? What's happening there? Because they don't need to sit on their hands and wait for the medical examiner. Is there anyone in that police department or in that DA's office who is willing to take up this torch?
So, I'll try to give this the briefest answer that I can here. But one of the main things that I think that we accomplished, all of us accomplished in this case, is we did get the case kicked out of the AG's office back down to the district attorney level. I am blanking on which county it went to, but basically this is what happened. The case was in Philadelphia County, and then Larry Krasner, who had been the attorney of Josh and Sandy, was elected DA. So he had a conflict of interest. So it got kicked up to the AG's office, where our now governor was the AG, a guy named Josh Shapiro. who I have no love for, but by the way, somebody tried to kill him and his family too pretty recently. And yeah, there's just no room for this, everybody.
Yeah,
Please don't do that.
yeah.
But anyway, there it languished for 4 years until a viewer of mine said, "Hey, Josh Shapiro's buddies with Sam Goldberg's family," and I was able to prove it. And
Wow.
when I put it on to YouTube, lo and behold, that was kicked out of the AG's office, and it is now in, I can't remember the name of the county right now, but the DA is a man named and I'm blanking on that now too. It doesn't matter. But anyway, it is in a DA's office right now.
That is hopefully a
Barena Sarobe is his name.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So he's also a Democrat, like Shapiro. So he's an elected official and he has aspirations for higher office. So, we talk about incentive structures a lot on my channel. There's the possibility of an incentive that is working against him. I don't know him though. I don't know if he's a man of integrity or not. He is known to be a pretty good person and a pretty straight shooter. But anyway, there it sits in his county. And man, I wish, I'm going to go crazy. Chester County. There it went. Took me a minute. It's in Chester County. And, but I think the only way that something is going to happen here, because it's been in Chester County now for 2.5 years. I think the AG's office would have to get back involved. And the AG is a man named Dave Sunday. He is a Republican. And I have no commentary on politics other than he's the opposite party of the current people who have failed to investigate. And I think that the AG's office may take it up if it says that it's not a suicide. If that is the case, then the state detectives will take a look at it. It's an outside shot.
Well, I hope so. Because again, I know that these poor people, Josh and Sandy, just kind of want their daughter to rest in peace. Yeah, I'm more bothered, and I know you are as well. I'm more bothered than that because I really feel like some sort of miscarriage of justice is taking place here, and it truly disturbs me. Even if they feel like 14 years removed, people of honest heart and integrity cannot find enough evidence to bring charges, the idea that they are looking into it seriously would make me feel better. But I feel like it's just been so swept under the rug, hidden over and buried that I don't believe an honest look has ever been taken at it.
Yeah. Well, one honest look has been taken out by a guy named Guy DeAndrea. He was in the Philadelphia District Attorney's office, and he found the case, and he said that he felt he had a homicide there. And I mean, he was looking into it before he left the office. But I mean, that's just I think getting it out of Philadelphia and into Harrisburg would do wonders for the case.
Yeah. Wow. Well, we could talk about this for forever. I kept you longer than I had promised you, so I appreciate you filling us in on all of this. But I will promise you to just bug you again. How about that? And have you back on to talk about this again. And I know you cover a lot of other cases too, and I feel like I really thoroughly enjoy our conversations as I have tonight. So thank you again. Is there anything coming up on your channel? Your channel's Gavin Fish, so easy enough to find. Is there anything coming up that you want to share with folks?
Have you heard about this case of the murder of Rebecca Baptiste, 10-year-old little girl who basically was tortured to death by her dad and her, I guess, stepmom?
No.
In Arizona. That's what we're kind of digging into right now. It's a tragic, tragic tale of just, I think the failure of not by anybody on purpose. There was an apathy here, but the failure of the system to protect a child that had 32, child protective services cases filed and ended up being, well, allegedly, according to investigators, being tortured to death by her parents. So we've been looking into that one.
How old is she?
10. With an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old little brother.
Good God.
2 little brothers.
All right. Well, I'm sure the coverage you have on it's going to be incredible, as is everything else that you're working on. Congratulations again on kind of making that shift to the full-time YouTube world, and thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
joining us this evening, my
Thanks
friend.
for having me. It's always a pleasure. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely. All right, guys, we put up links to Gavin's channel. If you're, I'm sure most of you are, but if you're not, please subscribe right now. He does incredible work, especially on some of these cases. He's just the go-to source, especially the Ellen Greenberg case. If you're at all interested in it, you can find out everything you need to know about it on his channel. All right, let's give you some announcements. First of all, oh my gosh, the Rebecca Baptiste case is so horrific, and CDS is definitely neglectful in that case, in my opinion. I'll have to look into that one. The children's ones really bother me, but if it's something that you guys are all following, I'll make sure to check it out. Have you heard about our website though? thecourtroomconfidential.com. If you go to thecourtroomconfidential.com, you can do one of several different things. First of all, you can leave us a message for Sunday. We're having our Sunday Fun Day. We missed last Sunday because we were at CrimeCon. We're making up for it this Sunday. It will be double the fun. And if you want to ask us a question, go to thecourtroomconfidential.com and click on leave us a question. What does it say? Leave us a message. And we will answer those questions live for you on Sunday. That will be this coming Sunday. Also, if you're curious about membership, you can go to thecourtroomconfidential.com and click on become a member and join the crew and learn about all the benefits. We work very hard on making that something that's worthwhile to all of you. And you can shop for merch at the shop. We've got all sorts of different colors. We've got brand new shirts saying what's happening here. We've got new mugs and tumblers. A lot of you were able to see that at CrimeCon because we brought out some of those for you guys to check out, including nobody guessed on my shirt color tonight. Why is that? Do we have a guess on what color shirt this is? This is, of course, the OG big logo Courtroom Confidential black shirt. Still available, right? Don't we still have these available? The one with the big logo and everything. So I decided to rock that one today. What did you miss on Monday? On Monday, we had our Monday Night Live special. It was just myself, but we talked about Donna Adelson, Wendy Adelson, and updated you guys on to what took place at CrimeCon and things to look forward to this week on the docket. So check that out if you missed it. It's up on our channel already. Jude Evans says it's licorice. I can't argue with that. It is licorice. Looks pink to me. And Kaylin says it's still, what is it? Mint? Chalky mint. She's still saying it's chalky mint. Stay tuned. This Saturday, we will have our new weekly roundup that will premiere at 8 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, as always. And Sunday Fun Day is back. Like I said, 9 a.m. Live at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. We got plenty of questions. If you've got more, you've got time to send those in. We're already talking about CrimeCon for 2026 because it's coming up. They announced it. It's going to be in Las Vegas this year. If you were looking for a reason, you said I don't get enthusiastic about visiting Denver, but I'll definitely go to Vegas. Well, it's May 29th through 31st, so not even a year away in Vegas. We will be there. We've already bought our tickets. We're already bugging people about our booth. We will be there. And we're already bugging them about a discount code. So I don't have that yet, but we will get that for you shortly. And then finally, let me thank some of our members, brand new members here. Susan and Savvy and Terry Boyle, Xana Martin, Jean Marie O'Mahony. I think I did that right. Tricia Kastler, Shannon T, Kathleen Kostrowski, Sizzle Ninaz, and Nikki Viveros, Samuel Oswald. There you go. That was my best effort. Thank you so much to our mods, Afton, Shigal, Kathy, Therapist, Thank you so much to Gavin Fish for joining us tonight. You're fantastic. Thank you, Kaylin, for making everything run so smoothly. And thank you, Tiffany, for being the best thing that ever happened to me. You guys all have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday, and we will see you all this weekend. Take care, everybody.